We all know the initial excitement of setting up a new habitat, acquiring a new animal, or posting your first pictures about it online. Unfortunately, this first thrill then oftentimes gets overshadowed by the daily grind or maybe a lack of immediate success. So it is common to jump from project to project or challenge to challenge without ever mastering any of them. When this happens, the so-called compounding effect of knowledge, experiences, and practices specific to one topic gets disrupted. This effect is also known as the snowball effect, can lead to exponential growth in, for example, your stock portfolio, social media following, or even reptile collection, if done right. So what does it take to become a long-lasting figure in a beautiful hobby? Is it the right vision? Is it commitment, discipline, hard work, or a bit of everything? Today we are getting to know Stefan, someone who has seen it all. He has experienced highs and lows in the hobby, and we are happy he is still around to tell us about his ideas, principles, and interesting stories. Let's go. Hell yeah, I'd say. Let's get right into it. European Herpetoculture podcast, episode number 5. We are really doing it. It's incredible. Let's see where it goes. Yeah, my name is Ben. I'm today's main host. Yeah, joined by our guest for today, the infamous Stefan Venikis. Yeah, nice to meet you, Stefan. Great to have you here. Yeah, so we are finally coming together to introduce you, Stefan, to just get to know more about your background, your ideas in the hobby, and also your plans for the future. We already learned quite a lot from you in our last episodes, I want to say, because yeah, well, you are the main guy riding the European Herpetoculture podcast wave for the moment, I want to say. So yeah, I can say I am prepared. I've got some questions. I've got a rough structure, and I would like to start with also your start in the hobby, Stefan. I would like to know about your first memory related to reptiles, and also how you got from liking reptiles to keeping them.
So until now, I've always said the key moment was me seeing a pair of Phelsuma madagascariensis, now called grandis, I believe, the Madagascar giant day geckos, in a terrarium with some friends, and it just was like the catalyst. But in our talks, I remembered that it actually started a little bit earlier, but it wasn't as profound, but I think it laid the fundamentals for what I'm doing now. And that is, of course, like many people, I liked dinosaurs and I liked Lego. I was just fascinated by all things nature. So instead of cartoons, I was mostly watching the Animal Planet when it was still cool in the Discovery Channel. And yeah, that I had that fascination, and we had Legos and dinosaurs. And yeah, the dinosaurs reigned supreme, as I said. You know, the dinosaurs always killed the Legos. They tried to contain them, but there was no containing the dinosaurs. And we had actually turtles. One of my first memories of actually having reptiles is that we had the Chemiscripta elegans, the red-eared sliders, and we had big ones, and we had them in an aquarium, first in the living room, later in the garden. And I actually remember me sitting in a bath with the turtles swimming around, which was, looking back, maybe not the smartest, but I enjoyed it. So I think those are my first memories. And then there came the catalyst. And luckily, my dad had a bookstore, and my mother and my dad were both very supportive of our hobbies and what we enjoyed. So my dad was like, okay, if you like this, here are some books. So I got a lot of books, and we got like the first computer with internet that took like a whole that took a long time to work. But yeah, I got access to the internet and I could scan in books, and it just expanded from there. And I've been keeping, I want to say I've been keeping them ever since. It's not totally correct because I've not always lived at home or in the conditions I was allowed to keep any reptiles or animals, but I was always invested in them. So even if I did not have any in my care, I was just, yeah, always planning, just planning. Okay, if I can do this, then I can do this. And if I have a cabinet like this or whatever. And yeah, so that's how it all looked. And my career in the hobby started with that, just at Catalyst. Yeah, there are some weird memories. Like, we didn't have a lot of money. We actually didn't have any money, especially when my parents divorced. So I remember I actually saw wood with like a bread knife. I used the bread knife to saw wood and to build just structures where I could keep these animals. It was totally insane.
That's commitment.
Yeah, for sure. And you find a aquarium and you put that on the side and put screen in front of it, and that was your annul setup, where there was also Bombina and Tachydromus, you know, all these weird combos. But we did what we had to do to be able to keep these animals.
I like what you said, that you started, you know, coming into the hobby with a supportive, with supportive parents, you can say. Your dad, for example, gave you some access to books, you know, and that's the main source of information back in the day, you know, before the internet was really a thing. And I can also remember very well that in my early age in the hobby, it was still the main source of information. It was books. It kind of changed, so to what it is today, because all information are just so easily available. So maybe you can also give me another idea of how much the internet changed your perception of the hobby, because suddenly forums were available, you could see what other people were doing, but you obviously did your thing just by yourself before that. So how was that the transition like? And today you're a public figure, you know?
Well, I don't consider myself that, but thank you so
but
much.
in the hobby.
Yeah. That's a bit of a hard question. That's a good question, therefore, to answer, because it all went so organically. You know, went from books, a little bit of internet, and then meeting some people at reptile shows, and then indeed it was forums. So not directly social media as we know it now, but it was forums indeed. And I've been on my own, almost to say it like that, for a long time. The first real experience I had with the internet was when I got into the venomous snakes, when I was a little bit almost 18, I believe. And then we had the Dutch venomous snake forum that was a part of Lacerta, big organization, big society within the Netherlands, and it was like this sub branch of it. And that's where I got into contact with a whole lot of different people. And I think it changed for me. First off, the amount of internet or the amount of info I could gather in a relatively short amount of time. I do have to say that if I think about it, it also has made me, and I think a lot of people who use this method, you got to be aware that when you were looking through these books, you got a whole bunch of info that was like coded around the info you were looking for or you were actually interested in. So you got all this extra information, and that also built your interest and expanded whatever you thought of things. And now I can be sometimes a bit too specific, and I think a lot of people are like that. Like, oh, I like that animal, I'm just gonna dig deep into it, and you can get a lot of info, but you almost skip out on a lot of those.
Forget about what's going on left and
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Especially if you have like magazines, the DGAT, there were a lot of magazines from them. We had Lacerta in the Netherlands and also the European Snake Society. There, you just read the whole book, and hopefully there was a bit of info on the species you enjoyed, but you just read all of it. And now it's so
it's so niche down that once you follow a specific hashtag on Instagram, you only get like content or information about that specific thing, you know? And the hobby is so diverse. I always feel like we, don't give so much attention to all of the facets of the hobby. There's also the invertebrate keeping, for example, the whole plant keeping community, the outdoor keeping and whatever. I think there's so much diversity in the hobby, and a lot of people maybe just don't know about what's possible because they are so, niched down into what they think for the moment is their specific interest. But it's variable, I feel like. And also you can have many interests. I feel like it's the same for you. You're getting into the plants really deep, You're in the turtles, had a long history in snakes and lizards, and everything plays a role kind of. So yeah, it's pretty diverse what you're doing. Um,
Maybe that
so
is because of that base and reading those books at the start.
probably.
Because I do know I have a lot of friends with who are really into turtles and obviously know a lot more about them than me. But
Hmm.
if I talk about a certain lizard or snake, nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And,
So
and
yeah.
maybe it is also because you're in the hobby for all your life. You kind of told us your story, You got so many years to build your knowledge, expertise, and experiences. And that's just something that you cannot have if you join the hobby at the age of maybe 25 or whatever. There are still people getting into the hobby not from a young age. So I think it's totally fine. But yeah, I think once you start getting into the hobby in a more adult state, maybe it's even a better idea to niche down. Maybe well, what do you think about it? Okay, no, well, what do you think about it, Stefan? If you got into the hobby today, how would you handle it to build the most amount of expertise in the shortest period of time? If you wanted to take it seriously, but you just got to know about keeping reptiles today.
Talk to people,
Yeah,
ma-
right?
build a podcast, you know?
Kind of.
Yeah, yeah, just most of the ideas and knowledge I got is still from other people. Those books really helped me,
Hmm.
and I think it's also important to mention that I did internships at pet stores, which later became my own pet store, where we
Yeah.
sold reptiles and fish. Did an internship at a reptile importer exporter and one that distributes them all through the Netherlands. I worked at a store with specific reptiles. I've been at reptile shows. So that also, of course, later, yeah, a little bit broader expansion. But if I would get into it now, I would definitely just talk to people. Look for the information, but then definitely try to connect to people who actually are doing it, because you can definitely learn from the theoretical part, and that's a good base to have. But actually, a student mentioned it today. What's in theory and what is actually able in practice can be totally different things.
Hmm.
And so I would definitely talk to people and
How would you get to know
from
people?
them.
Like, would you try to find them on Instagram? It's probably the most easy to use platform today, or what would you do?
I think it also depends a bit on your age, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
so
speaking about you now.
Instagram is a good one. That's
Yeah.
definitely the one I'm using now. I'm on Facebook, but I don't use it, only to see some certain groups and get some info from there. But now I'm using Instagram mostly. I don't really like Instagram as a way of conversation. I think it's cool, like, hey, that's cool what you're doing, and it's, we share some interest. But I still try to connect with them a bit more, even maybe eventually get the person's number, talk over WhatsApp or whatever. That to me is
Yeah,
already a more flowing way to
definitely.
have a conversation, and call them eventually. It's like, hey, let's do a call, whatever. I think Corona has shown us that via Zoom or Teams or whatever, you
Yeah.
can you
Yeah, we
yeah,
we really learned how to appreciate Zoom calls or online calls in general,
yeah,
also WhatsApp calls, FaceTime, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, it is really a way of connecting.
for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
And I
that's true.
think,
So
yeah,
don't be
it's a good
shy,
tool to use.
everybody out there. Reach out to the people you're interested in. I guess they will be glad to give you some access to information.
Yeah. And I think, we talked about this with Dylan in the introduction podcast also, that we can be a bit private, which is very rational, I think. But if you come at someone with a bit of enthusiasm and passion, and you have shown that you did your research before you start talking to them. So don't ask questions like what size is the setup or whatever.
Yeah,
You can do that, but I mean with make sure you have a little bit of a base and you've done your own research, and then you can ask specific question. If you do that, like everybody I ask specific questions, like, or I give them a compliment, or man, that looks so cool, or I like how you approach that. The conversation is so, yeah, it's so different, and you can see people light up, and then the
yeah.
nerdiness comes out, and we,
Just get a different base then.
yeah, we
Yeah.
can just go like, oh, this is the moment I can go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fully get it. So I think Instagram is really a good platform to connect. And yeah, I think I've also had very good experiences with people reaching out, and I'm also always happy to help, kind of. Yeah, so anyways, Stefan, you also already started to tell us a little bit about, this shift of your history in the hobby from private keeper and enthusiast to professional. Yeah, and I just would like to know how that transition was like when you like this idea of making it a living, the whole animal thing. How did you came to the realization that you really want to do it? And what were your steps to get into it?
I don't know if I consider myself a professional, really, but
Because today, or first,
yeah,
please tell us about the steps that you did, like in terms of your profession. Let's say like that. Let's keep it open
yeah,
like that.
let's, yeah. From what point would you like to know?
From the age of, I don't know, 18. I
Yeah.
think you made your decisions pretty early.
Yeah. I liked the animals, and that's when it just kept going, I think. Yeah, that's true. Well, it helped that I got some money, and then I was able to actually get some animals. And due to my internships and my jobs, I was just able to experience a whole lot. So I think that shaped me. Yeah, the people around me, and somehow I've just always been an all-in person. So you could see in my hobby, then when I liked snakes, I didn't have one or two snakes. I just wanted to experience everything. And then from the snakes came the venomous snakes, and then the vipers. So I had a whole bunch of vipers, and then we had Asian pit vipers, and then it shifted towards that. So it always moved a little bit like that. And I was just really into it. So I still don't consider it a profession, really. I just do it several hours a day.
Yeah,
Since,
but also your day job, it is related to animal
yeah,
care.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
obviously you're in the industry, I
Yeah,
want to
that's
say.
true. That's true. That's true. Okay. So my day job, for the people listening, is I'm actually a teacher in the animal management sector.
Yeah.
And I got that job after I quit my store. So I had my store. After almost 8 years, I quit that. And the last year I did like this guest lesson at the school, and I really enjoyed that. And then at the school, I actually stopped before I got my diploma. Um, at the school, I was following an education, but I quit because I felt like, okay, I can start a pet store. It's better on my resume than having this certain level of animal management. And I was just not made for school at the time. So I did that. And actually, that school where I quit is the place that I work now. And one of the teachers that I got some of the lessons from mentioned to me that at the school at the time that I quit with the store was like, hey, we have a vacant spot for animal caretaker at the school. So I was like, oh, that's perfect because I can work with animals and I can trying education, and that's something that I enjoyed with the guest lesson. And I was highly motivated to do that. So, and within, I don't think it was the first day, but within like a week, I was helping with the practical classes. And of course, I had my experience in the store. So also we talked a little bit about the management aspect and the bit of the commercial aspect. And it just grew from there. I just liked it, and people saw what my qualities were. So I was very lucky to have people around me that were able to spot those things while I was not totally sure of myself yet. And they stimulated me to, hey, maybe get the education. And I did that, and I flew through it really. And yeah, and that also helps. And it mostly helped me to translate what I was actually doing, because a lot I was doing and a lot was on intuition and on theory. But if you're want to explain it to somebody, you need to break it down to the essentials. And that also really helped me as a keeper. And I am a mentor now for several years. Students do internships at a whole bunch of different companies, like where they have cattle, where they have the water buffalo for the mozzarella, to reptile stores, whatever. So I'm also able to visit all these companies, and that also helped a ton, because I got to talk to
You've got
other.
it's such a cool way of building a diverse network that you
Yeah.
don't really have access to in any other way, kind of, right?
Well, it
So
certainly makes it easier. I certainly can't deny that that makes it a whole lot easier for
yeah,
sure. And yeah, that's why I enjoy it so much. So at the moment, I still don't consider myself a professional, because I feel like there's so much yet to learn and to improve on. But it did make it more. Yeah, I don't know how
hmm
to say this.
yeah. Okay. Anyways, I can see where you're coming from, and you know what I really like about you is that you, as you said in the beginning, you're an all-in person. You know, when we've been riding around Lausanne on the fixie, no brakes. Uh, I kind of, you know, felt that energy, and I like the commitment that you have for what you're doing. So obviously you're taking it very seriously, the whole hobby. That's what we also said in the podcast with Dylan, what we spoke about. And so I would like you to give us a little introduction of the projects that you are working on right now, because there's something going on inside of your house that you're taking pretty seriously too. So maybe just give us a brief introduction of the species that you're keeping and the main idea of the project, what is going on.
Maybe it's cool to mention that I made a shift towards what I'm doing now in like 2015, 16. That's when it started. And that's when I started to keep some turtles. I was in love with the Monoria Emmys, and I got some Ciborocchiella. And I did that because I really liked what I was doing with the snakes. But I don't know, I just needed something new, some exciting. And also, Asian turtles were having a hard time. So I felt like, oh, maybe I can keep some animals and breed them. It's a very romantic idea, something I'm a little bit more skeptic on sometimes now, but that's how it all started. And yeah, so now I actually don't have any snakes anymore for more than 2 years now. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who lost the bet. And I keep Saccalia quadrirosalata and Bailei, so both species of Saccalia. Platysternon, my absolute love. That's one of the species I saw in the books when I was a child, so it's just insane to have them now. The Monoria, the Varai, and also Monoria impressa. And next to that, I have Quora trifasciata. I have some Quora on a breeding loan, but those will eventually move back, because I found that terrestrial Quora we don't match. And yeah, and of course I have some lizards, the Lanthanotus, and the Shinisaurus. The last one is gonna move this Sunday, but eventually I will have Shinisaurus again. I just want to restart that whole project. So yeah, and I have 2 rooms,
That's
warm
what I
room.
wanted to get into now.
Yeah,
Yeah, so thanks for sharing the species list, I want to say. But give us a little bit of a more overview about the species. Why did you specifically chose those, and what is a common connection between those?
Okay, first off, it's simply fascination, but I have decided to skip. I've decided to stick to a certain area of the world because I know I'm this all-in person and I need to like create boundaries for myself. So I've made these boundaries for myself, but also to make the care I can provide for my animals a whole lot easier. And I don't say taking care of your animals doesn't take effort, but I do believe that if you keep it a bit easier and efficient, it's better for you, for the animals. Everybody has a day that's a little bit down, and you're still able to do what's needed. Anyway, I have a warm and a cool room. And the warm room, that's where, for instance, my lanthanotes are. And that room is more and more dedicated to species from Borneo and really the tropical parts of Asia. So a bit of Thailand, mostly Borneo. And that room is also more of my fun room. So a lot of plants, cool lights. It just looks cool. Not the most efficient way of care, just very naturalistic and really fun. And then there's the other room, which is my cool room, as I call it, because it's cool looking, but it's also because that is where the turtles are that are found in Southeast Asia, and more specifically around the Hong Kong region, a little bit of northern Vietnam and a little bit northern to Hong Kong. So still quite a big range, but relatively specific compared to most collections. And that room I call the cool room because it's being cooled down at night by using just the air from outside. I live in the Netherlands, so except for the really hot summer, our nights are pretty cool. And because all those animals go in hibernation. And in that room, the species are all either endangered or vulnerable. So that room actually wanna use to, yes, I want to keep my animals, provide them with what they need and keep them very natural, but that room is going to be more dedicated to efficient way of keeping, maybe a bit more less appealing to look at, but a place where I can expand the groups as genetically healthy as possible to one day create a group that I can use to spread around the species in a responsible way. And that's also the room where I want to keep the animals that at least with all the endangered species, there's like no monetary gain from them.
Yeah, that's something that we spoke about in
Yeah.
the podcast where it's about the introduction of myself,
Hmm.
and that's also a point that I wanted to get into with you because I think it is a very interesting concept, and it's a concept that is not as widespread as it should be, in my opinion. Removing the financial aspect of the animals itself, but everything around it, it's okay if it produces some revenue to support what you are doing. At the end of the day, you are you can say that you are running a facility. I don't want to call it a business, but it's a kind of a facility. And of course, it comes with some costs for energy, electricity, water, feeding new animals, whatever. So it should be okay to, get a revenue stream in the other direction. So I think it is fine to consider the idea of making some money inside of the hobby, but I appreciate a lot that you want to separate the animals from it. Even though your collection is probably very valuable and it is an option to even make bigger amounts of money selling your animals to other continents, I would say. So I think it's very cool what you're doing as it's kind of a role model also for me. And so I would like you to get a little bit more deep into your idea of, being a part of a conservation project, I want to say, right? So which kind of projects are there that you would like to connect with? And do you also have the idea of probably one day in the future building one for yourself?
I'm not totally sure on that. I'm definitely inspired by like what the Turtle Survival Alliance is doing, the European Stopbook Foundation, which is doing some cool things, and of course in Munster and St. Emmys, all those connections. I really like that. I like what zoos are doing. And I'm certainly not at the point yet, you know, and now I gotta sell to also invest back in new animals. But that's pretty much the only reason I do all this stuff, not to gain from it, but just to expand and work towards certain goals. You know, that's the only reason. Everything is connected, but it has one very specific goal. Anyway, yeah, so you know, it's still taking shape. Honestly, I've gotten a little bit pessimistic on if we are able to create a healthy population within captivity that can be one day sent back to their natural range. So it can be, you know, different ways how to approach it. So for now, the goal is just to expand genetic interest in groups and spread them among other keepers who are serious about this, and keep them in a certain way that if it's needed, there is a possibility. And yeah, how do I say it? So it's sort of a stop book foundation. So the animals are part of a project, and you are able to keep those animals, or maybe I donate them to whatever organization who is doing cool stuff and say, okay, put these on your stop books. So there's no money involved anymore. So they're simply, okay, how can we use these animals for a cool project, a genetic bank, or expanding the population within captivity, learn from them, whatever, you know. So that's an option. The option I've also thought about is, okay, maybe I can still sell some animals, but have the money be put back into projects that help the animals from in their natural range.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the most
easy.
efficient way to do it, you know.
Probably.
And I can start a bit easier with that. And that's also my dream with the channel. You know, I have the YouTube channel, and maybe even someday this podcast, you know, if there's any revenue from it. Of course there's cost, and we spend a lot of time on this, but I would love to be able to build information bank or platform or whatever about these animals, and then having people interested in that, and the money that comes from that can also be used to help local or in situ projects or whatever.
Tell me about some local or in situ projects that you were interested in.
Well, there's a good one. I'm still figuring that out. I really like what Munster is doing. I really like that. And the Cambodian projects that are in place, and you also have Cuc Phong in Vietnam.
We gotta go there one day, man.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be long.
Places like that sounds like that would be something. Of course, I gotta dig more into the place because I want to be sure that, you know, you're supporting the right ones. On the other hand, there's also a lot of projects in the Netherlands to via Rafon, etc., to help the more local herpetofauna. So why also not help that? You know, so but then it's a question of choice, your interest, because you can't help everyone, even though you like to. So there's always a project that's going to be left behind. So I think you gotta prioritize.
I feel like the podcast, it can be a cool platform to invite some conservation projects over, you know, to really connect to them, get to know them, and then maybe make a decision of, you know, probably a partnership or whatever you can think of. And maybe also the audience can be interested in that. I feel like it's a very cool concept in general, connecting your private collection to a higher goal in the native range of the animals. And I'm pretty sure it will be a difficult, an interesting journey figuring out how to make a cool impact.
Yeah, so I agree with you totally that this podcast is hopefully going to help, and hopefully we can at least platform some cool initiatives, you know, and like the Center Emmys, we've been in Swiss. That's cool. So, you know, so why not make a cool video of it, or have somebody on a podcast that's involved in whatever conservation conversation have a conversation about conservation and to promote that and whatever. And yeah, I think that
True.
that's already, I think that is already a step towards
Is
the right direction.
is that something that you see the hobby moving towards? You know, this idea of integrating the conservation more into the keeping, because also I feel like this topic of citizen conservation is more and more a thing, but maybe it's just also in my bubble. I don't know. So what do you think about the hobby of the future of the hobby, and do you think this increasing importance of conservation is really playing a role, or is it something that we are just speaking about in our tiny bubble?
Yeah, that could be right because it all sounds so romantic
Yeah.
almost. And as people are listening to this, they're probably, I'm sorry, but the ideas are still taking shape. I have almost more of an idea of the feeling or the result I want to accomplish, but not
It's a
directly.
process.
Yeah, definitely. As far as the future in our hobby, I think these projects are gonna be really important to, I think keeping animals as pets is great. I think on a also a social level and social economical level, keeping animals or farming animals or whatever is needed and adds a whole lot. And I believe that reptiles are very suited. A lot of species are very suited, in my opinion, to be kept in captivity. But I think these projects are also important because it shows the importance of what we are doing. And it almost justifies maybe certain actions or rectifies certain actions that were made in the past. And so, yeah, I think for the future, these projects are needed. It does seem to depend a lot on which country you live and the directors of whatever organization. Because, like in the Netherlands, uh, I'm sure there's a few, but I can't really find a great example of a zoo or park or project working together with private keepers. Only
Mhm.
for like citizen getting information, like, oh, this time we saw those animals and that's where I found that animal, or hey, we spotted a hybrid there, or a disease, whatever, that stuff. But there's no welcome. And like in Germany, the citizen conservation project, I would love to know and learn more about that. But that seems quite unique, actually.
I haven't
And
heard about anything similar so far too. I'm not sure
yeah,
if there's anything like that in the States,
of
but
course, yeah. We
I
have the
feel
Europe. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I feel very happy that we have a project like that building, right around us.
Yeah,
And they're adding more and more species. For the beginning, they were mostly focused on amphibians, right?
yeah,
And now they're getting into fish and probably reptiles is next, and we'll see where it goes from there. I think there's a lot of potential in the project, and I would like to spread the word here on the podcast too to get some people involved.
yeah, for sure. They actually added their first reptiles, the Coora cycloornata,
Oh,
I
true,
believe.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah, true. We spoke about it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So we will see where the hobby goes. We're, I guess, confident to, stay strong, being a positive influence
What do you hope? What do you hope, Ben?
for the hobby. Yeah, people, for people in the hobby to be less I know, I wanted to say to be less selfish and to maybe think more of a higher goal, whatever that is, even if that is, and for me personally, for example, it is trying to improve the standards of care of the animals that you're working on. And if you can improve the standards for your own animals and share that online, you can be a positive influence for a lot of individuals. And I would like to see a lot of people really getting deep into learning about species and trying to, innovate a little bit so we can all make the animal care and the hobby a little bit better. So I'm very positive the hobby will stay a thing, whatever shape or form. Probably the regulations will make it more difficult, but I'm sure that there will always be a way. Um, yeah, and I hope we will be We will be seen as some kinds of role models one day, but it's gonna be a challenge, and a long way to get there. Yeah, I don't know. That's how I see it. How do you feel about it, Stefan?
Yeah, maybe it's I think something along those lines. I hope for. On the other hand, I'm cool with people just enjoying the hobby for simply enjoying the hobby,
Of course, of
But
course.
for me, it needs to be a little bit more than that. I think, there's no denying that. I think listening and all this.
At least I feel like at least when you're doing it just for yourself, it's totally fine to keep a single pet lizard. Of course, it's totally okay, but at least do it with captive bred animals then, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure, and yeah, that's one of the opinions I've expressed before. Indeed, is that if it's going to be a pet animal, then take one of the common species when you can enjoy one there's a lot of info on, and one that is not like taken out of the relation for just for that. I feel like everybody that gets wild caught should try to breed them.
Yeah, and
And
should take it fucking seriously.
yeah,
Yeah,
because you owe that to that animal
true.
and everything that it costs. Because let's be honest, the numbers that are being thrown out there that die in the first year or whatever, and or die during shipping are not as high as they are said. I have done any statistics, but I've worked at a reptile importer, so I know a little bit how it looks. But it did cost something. It did cost certain animals' lives or whatever to get to the point where they are now. So you're almost obliged to try and breed them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And yeah, and the same goes for possible rare animals or whatever. I will be I will be so selfish if I had like one Platysternum female and there was a guy with a Platysternum male. I was like, oh cool, man. Yeah,
But I don't
okay.
want to give away mine. Yeah.
No,
And he doesn't want to give away his, so
no,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
So and then they can be in your care and then they die and then they're gone. And
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, the ego sometimes in a way.
yeah.
That's the thing in the hobby.
The
But okay.
want.
So I feel like we covered a lot. Is there anything that you would like to speak about today that you would like to tell the listeners about you that they will not get to know about in the next couple of episodes, anyways?
No, I think people will get to know us a whole lot better simply based on the questions we are going to ask.
Yeah.
That shows a little bit what we are interested in. And I think I'm just really looking forward to this sorry. I'm just really looking forward to this project because it's just another element that involves what I would like to achieve. So and it's also it's definitely also for me or for us just to connect with a whole bunch of cool people, and I'm
Mhm.
really looking forward to platform what is animal, because I believe I said this before, but I think a lot of what we do is, there is some downsides to what we are doing or some bad elements or however you want to call it, but I think what we are doing is pretty beautiful. There's a lot of cool and beautiful people in this hobby and beautiful things they are doing. So I'm a very romantic person, I'm starting to realize. At least the last.
Anybody, anybody who wants to speak to Stefan in person can
No,
send
no,
an
no, no, no.
application. Can send an application on Instagram if you're doing good stuff with your animals or plants or whatever. If you're taking the hobby seriously, if you feel like you're just having a good message that you want to share, don't be shy. Reach out to us, either in person or personally, or on the European Herpetoculture Instagram page, I want to say. Yeah, we are open to book some dates, and it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, so the next episode is actually going to be our first with a guest. Are you
Hmm.
looking forward, Ben?
It's gonna be Jonas.
Yeah, Jonas is good.
Oh,
Oh, spoiler.
oh, fuck
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Same. I'm
Stay
definitely
tuned.
looking forward.
Subscribe, like, comment, share,
All that stuff.
all that stuff. All right. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank
I
you.
think we are done, right?
This was okay. I think we've done well. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Au.
Good evening.